Tarte Tatin, because the Tarte Tatin, you'll see lots of recipes for it, but it doesn't have to be very difficult. Very simple in many ways. I'm going to use some foil ramekins to make these. Just really simple foil ramekins, so they're easy to transport. You easily take them home. But if you're doing them in a restaurant, after all, in a more, like let's say a nice white table restaurant, go ahead and use real ramekins. Real nice ceramic ramekins. They look nicer. They carries more, carries more elegance than you would get with a oiled one. But I'm going to cut my apples a little thicker, so I'm going to cut them more like 1/4 inch thick. And the reason for that is because they're going to be cooked in a pan, so I don't need to go so thin. I'm going to be able to stop the cooking when I want to. I'm just making a couple of them here. But if you're making more than a couple, you can always make more apples, use more apples. Now, I've got my puff pastry ready to go. I'll leave that off to the side for a moment. I've also got some butter here. I personally don't measure anything when it comes to doing Tarte Tatin. I do all of this by eye, and I prefer to go that way. There are recipes that you can follow them. Very simply, I turn on my fire, about medium fire. I'm going to take some sugar, and I'm going to put that in the pan to make a dry caramel. Remember the dry caramel? So I've got probably a 1/4 cup of sugar in there. And I'm just going to let that dry caramel come up to a point where it's starting to liquefy and starting to get a little color to it. I'm personally shooting for about medium honey color, like clover honey. And the reason why is because I don't want it to get too dark or too bitter. I just want to get some good flavor. So, once it gets to that point, I'm going to stop the cooking. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to add butter to it. Butter is cold. It's also got water in it. It's going to stop the cooking quite quickly. And it's going to create something of a caramel sauce rather than caramel candy. If we want it to be hard and crackly, then we would not put any butter in. But this will create more like a gooey kind of caramel sauce, which is something that I think we'll enjoy a lot more when it comes to eating a warm dessert. So I'm just waiting for my sugar to come up right now. I'm first going to get the sugar to the caramel stage and stop that cooking with the butter. And I'm going to add my apples. My apples are going to stop the cooking even more and start to release their juice. As they release their juice, they're going to start creating that sauce. And after I'm satisfied with it, I'm just going to stop the cooking altogether and take it off the fire. This is starting to turn to liquid now. So as it does, I'm just going to go ahead and make up this sauce. Once the apples are prepared, I'm going to be putting them into some ramekins. And then I'm going to cover each ramekin with a big, large piece of puff pastry and toss them in the oven. What that's going to do is the apples are going to continue cooking in the oven. Puff pastry is going to puff, and this will then be served upside down. Okay? And if they don't all come out of the ramekin, I can show you that in a little bit, but it's all right because they will just eventually, you can scoop them out. It's a country dessert, right? This is something made by the farming families in Provençal region of France. Very country cooking here. So as you can see, I'm getting a tiny bit of smoke, and I'm getting a good color on my caramel. I don't know if you guys can see that from back there, but it's starting to get a nice honey color with the caramel. And because the pan's hot, it's going to continue cooking. So in goes the butter. And this is going to steam and bubble really quick when you throw in butter. But just stir it around with the pan. It's going to melt, and as it does, it creates a sauce. Then I'm going to throw in my apples. Now how much butter did I put in? I threw in about probably 2 tablespoons of butter. Who cares how much? The key is that it makes a nice sauce. So I don't try to worry about how much, as much as I do getting it to look right. In go the apples, and I stir those around until they get to be nice and coated with a caramel sauce. And I'm going to let them cook for a little bit. I want the apples to kind of start to lose their crunch and start to get cooked a little bit. This makes sure that when it's finally served, that the apples will have a nice soft texture to them. By themselves, by itself, this will taste wonderful. But is there anything you could do to this to make it taste even better?
Yeah.
What could you do?
Liqueur.
Sure you could. What kind of liqueur?
Grand Marnier.
Grand Marnier.
Brandy.
A little brandy. Maybe a little bit of dark rum. Those kinds of things make everything taste nice, a little nicer. So it depends on your audience. If you're serving these for children, of course, you probably leave that out. But when it comes to adults, they love this kind of thing. Of course, if you use something name brand, like Myers Rum, Grand Marnier, something like that, make sure to mention that on your menu. Say, this is a Grand Marnier Tarte Tatin, apple Tarte Tatin. That will help you sell the product, and it'll also help bump up the price a little bit. You know, you can always ask a little more money when it's a premium quality liqueur. So for those of you who don't see that, my apples are cooking in there with a nice caramel sauce. And let's see, they're about a 1/4 inch thick. So I'm going to give them a few minutes on the fire to make sure they're cooked. In the meantime, they're going to cool down a little bit. I'm going to get some puff pastry rolled out so that I can then finish off these Tarte Tatins with some puff pastry.
Here's the egg wash. That's egg wash. That's that, like
So the apples are cooking. I'm rolling out some puff pastry here. Just kind of getting ready. Sure. I like it more traditional. And even better. Okay, so as I'm working here, my apples are almost finished. I'm going to go ahead and shove the fire for the apples. And we're going to go ahead and start dispensing some apples into the ramekins, just to kind of get these ready to go. There's plenty of butter in this caramel, so I'm not going to worry about having to grease these pans at all. What I'd like to do is put the apples in kind of neatly, you know, just kind of so that they form a nice coat on the bottom of the ramekin. Let's see, I'll probably get 2 out of this. This is 1 apple. You know, 1 apple, 1/4 cup of sugar, 2 tablespoons of butter, and nothing else. So a little bit of sauce. And then, as you notice here, I've already cut a couple of very large cut pieces of puff pastry. They seem rather large, but they really will be beautiful once they're baked. So I'll place these on a little pan. We'll put some puff pastry down. Then I'm going to press this down inside my ramekin. I don't mind having a little extra puff pastry sticking out, because what that's going to do is it's going to pop. It's going to look really pretty. You can imagine, while you're doing this, the Tatin sisters doing this in 1860, and they were worried that they had ruined everything, and now they're coming up with some inventive new solution. All right, so these are going in the oven. and they'll just bake like that. When I serve them, of course, there's plenty of apple and sauce in there, so that's going to ooze out over the top. So I'm going to put this on a plate, flip it over so it's finely plated when I do turn it upside down. And it looks really nice. We'll bake this, and I think you'll like it. If you want to make these, you're welcome to. They're a lot of fun to make.